You went to therapy, you set boundaries, you started choosing yourself, and the people who should be celebrating you, your own family, are treating you like you've betrayed them. They make passive-aggressive comments about how you've changed. They guilt you for not showing up the way you used to. They call you selfish for having needs. They say things like, "You think you're better than us now?" And here's the part that breaks you. You start wondering if they're right. Maybe you are being selfish. Maybe you have changed too much. Maybe growth means losing the only people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. But here's what nobody tells you. Your family doesn't hate your growth because you're doing something wrong. They hate it because your growth is forcing them to confront everything they've refused to face about themselves. Let me tell you something that's going to hurt. Your family's resistance to your growth isn't about love, it's about control, and it's about their own unhealed wounds, because here's what's really happening. Your growth disrupts the family system. Every family operates like an ecosystem. Everyone has a role, everyone knows their place, and the system stays balanced as long as everyone plays their part. You were probably the peacekeeper, the helper, the one who absorbed everyone's emotions, the one who stayed small so others could feel big, the one who sacrificed your needs to keep the family functioning, and now you've stopped playing that role. You've started saying no. You've started having boundaries. You've started choosing your well-being over their comfort. The system is collapsing, and they're blaming you for it. The system is collapsing, and they're blaming you for it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The system was never healthy. It only worked because you were willing to hurt yourself to maintain it. Your family doesn't want you to go back to being healthy. They want you to go back to being small, because your smallness made them comfortable. Think about it. When you were struggling, burnt out, people-pleasing, and sacrificing yourself, were they concerned? Did they tell you to rest, to set boundaries, to prioritize yourself? Or did they happily accept everything you gave while you quietly fell apart? They benefited from your dysfunction, and now that you're healing, they're losing those benefits. That's why they're angry. Not because they love you and are worried about you, but because your growth is costing them something. And the most painful part? They'll never admit this. They'll frame their resistance as concern, as family loyalty, as love. They'll make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. They'll weaponize your past against you. You never used to be like this. You're right. You didn't used to have boundaries. You didn't used to value yourself. You didn't used to know you deserved better, and they prefer it that way. Let me show you exactly what's happening. There are specific patterns at play when your family resists your growth. Understanding these will help you see that their resistance isn't about you, it's about them. Pattern number 1, the role disruption. Every family system has roles. The hero, the scapegoat, the lost child, the mascot, the caretaker. These roles keep the family system balanced, usually at the expense of individual well-being. You had a role. Maybe you were the emotional caretaker, the one everyone dumped their problems on. Maybe you were the scapegoat, the one blamed for the family's dysfunction. Maybe you were the hero, the one whose achievements made the family look good. When you start growing, you step out of that role, and suddenly the system doesn't work anymore. Here's what nobody tells you. Your role wasn't about who you are. It was about what the family needed from you to avoid dealing with their own issues. If you were the caretaker, your emotional labor allowed everyone else to avoid taking responsibility for their feelings. If you were the scapegoat, blaming you allowed them to avoid looking at the real problems. If you were the hero, your success allowed them to feel validated without doing their own work. Your growth threatens the entire structure, because if you're not playing your role, someone else has to. Or worse, the family has to actually address the dysfunction instead of using you to manage it. That's why they're angry. You've stopped being their solution, and now they have to face their problems. Pattern number 2, the mirror effect. Your growth holds up a mirror to their stagnation. This is not your fault, but it is your reality. When you start going to therapy, the family members who refuse to address their trauma feel judged, even if you never said a word. When you set boundaries, the people who have none feel confronted. When you start prioritizing yourself, the people who've spent their lives sacrificing feel cheated. You didn't do anything to them, but your evolution illuminates their choices, and instead of being inspired or curious, they feel threatened. They minimize your progress. Therapy is just expensive complaining. They mock your boundaries. Oh, so you're too good for us now. They invalidate your growth. You're being brainwashed. Here's the thing that changes everything. Their reaction to your growth tells you everything about their relationship with themselves. Healthy people celebrate growth, even when it's uncomfortable for them. They might struggle with the changes, but they want you to be well. Unhealthy people attack growth because it forces them to confront why they haven't done the work themselves. Your healing makes them uncomfortable because it reveals their woundedness, and instead of sitting with that discomfort and using it as motivation, they project it onto you. Pattern number 3, the loyalty test. This is the most manipulative pattern and the hardest to recognize. They frame your growth as betrayal. Family comes first. We don't air our dirty laundry. What happens in this house stays in this house. Blood is thicker than water. You're turning your back on us. These aren't expressions of love. These are control tactics disguised as family values. Because here's what they're really saying. Your loyalty to us should override your loyalty to yourself. Your well-being is less important than our comfort. Your truth is less important than our image. Your healing is less important than our denial. They've created a false dichotomy. You can either be healthy or you can be loyal to the family. You can't be both. But that's a lie. Real family loyalty includes wanting each other to be healthy, even when that health disrupts the status quo. When your family says you've changed, what they mean is, you've stopped prioritizing us above yourself. When they say you're being selfish, what they mean is, you're no longer serving our needs at your expense. They're calling your self-preservation betrayal, and they're doing it so effectively that you're starting to believe it. If you're thinking, this is exactly what I've been experiencing but couldn't name, if these patterns are clicking into place and making sense of years of confusion, this is exactly why I create this content every week. I break down the family dynamics that keep you trapped in guilt so you can see clearly and choose freely. Hit subscribe so you never miss insights like these. Every week, we're diving into the psychology of family systems, toxic patterns, and how to heal without losing yourself. If you're ready to understand what's really happening behind the guilt trips and manipulation, you belong here. Pattern 4, the weaponized past. Your family has receipts, and they're not afraid to use them. Remember when we helped you through that hard time? After everything we've done for you, we raised you better than this. This is how you repay us? They're turning love into a transaction. Every act of care, every moment of support, every instance of being there, it's all being itemized and presented as a bill you now owe. But here's what nobody tells you. Love isn't a loan. Care isn't currency. Family isn't a debt system. When they helped you, when they supported you, when they were there, that was supposed to be because they loved you, not because they were building a case for future manipulation. Real support doesn't come with strings attached. Real love doesn't keep a ledger. Real family doesn't cash in their care when you start making choices they don't like. And here's the really insidious part. They probably don't even realize they're doing it. This is how they were taught family works. Loyalty through obligation. Connection through guilt. Love through debt. But you don't have to accept this framework. You don't owe anyone your well-being. You don't owe anyone your mental health. You don't owe anyone the right to keep hurting you just because they've also helped you. Pattern number 5, the scapegoating intensification. If you were already the scapegoat, your growth makes the scapegoating worse. Because now you're not just the problem, you're the problem and you're refusing to accept the blame anymore. Every family issue gets redirected to you. This family was fine until you started with all this therapy stuff. You're tearing this family apart. Your boundaries are hurting everyone. Notice what's happening. The family's dysfunction existed long before your growth. The tension, the unresolved issues, the pain, it was always there. You were just absorbing it, managing it, or being blamed for it. Now you're refusing to be the emotional dumping ground. You're refusing to be the problem. You're refusing to carry what isn't yours. And they're panicking. Because if you're not the problem, they have to look at the actual problems. And that's terrifying for a family system built on denial. So they double down. They intensify the scapegoating. They make your growth the villain of the family story. Because that's easier than facing the truth. So why does this happen? Why do the people who are supposed to love you the most resist your healing? Let's talk about the psychology of family systems. First, families operate on homeostasis. This is a biological term that means balance. Living systems naturally resist change because change threatens stability. Your family system reached an equilibrium, a balanced state, even if that balance was unhealthy. Everyone knew their role, everyone knew the rules, everyone knew how to function. Your growth disrupts that equilibrium. And like any living system, the family's first response is to restore balance, which means pulling you back to your old role. This isn't conscious, this isn't deliberate malice, this is the system protecting itself. But that doesn't make it okay. Second, unhealed trauma gets passed down through generations. This is called intergenerational trauma or transgenerational trauma. Your parents probably learned their patterns from their parents. Who learned from their parents? Who learned from their parents? Generations of unexamined pain, passed down like heirlooms. When you start healing, you're breaking a cycle that's been going for generations. You're the pattern interrupt. And that's threatening, not just to your immediate family but to the entire legacy of learned dysfunction. Your family's resistance isn't just about you, it's about their resistance to facing their own inherited wounds. Third, there's something called differentiation in family systems theory. Differentiation is your ability to be yourself while remaining connected to your family. It's the balance between autonomy and belonging. Families with low differentiation can't tolerate individuality. Everyone has to think the same, feel the same, want the same things. Your identity is enmeshed with the family identity. When you start differentiating, when you start having your own thoughts, feelings, values, boundaries, the family experiences it as abandonment, because in an enmeshed system, being different feels like leaving. They're not rejecting your growth, they're terrified of losing you, but their terror is causing them to do the exact thing that will actually lose you, pushing you away through control and criticism. Fourth, shame plays a huge role. Many families operate on a shame-based system where image and reputation matter more than authenticity and well-being. What will people think? Don't embarrass the family. We don't talk about those things. Your growth, especially if it involves therapy, naming abuse, setting boundaries, threatens the family's carefully curated image. You're exposing what they've worked so hard to hide. And in a shame-based system, that's unforgivable. Because if the truth comes out, the shame they've been running from for generations will catch up with them. Now. And this is crucial. Let's talk about the guilt you're carrying. You're not betraying your family by growing. You're not being selfish by having boundaries. You're not abandoning anyone by choosing your mental health. You're interrupting a cycle of dysfunction. And that's hard, and lonely, and painful. But it's not wrong. Your family's response isn't about you being bad or wrong, it's about them being scared and stuck. They're operating from their own wounds, their own fears, their own unhealed trauma. That doesn't make their behavior okay. Understanding why they're doing it doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. Compassion for their pain doesn't require you to accept their abuse. You can hold two truths at once. They're hurting, and they're hurting you. They learned these patterns, and you don't have to keep living them. They're doing their best, and their best isn't good enough for your well-being. Here's what I need you to understand. You didn't break the family. The family was already broken. You just stopped pretending it wasn't. The happy family you think you're destroying by setting boundaries, that family only existed because you were willing to hurt yourself, to maintain the illusion. That wasn't a real family. That was a performance. And you were exhausting yourself being the lead actor. Your growth didn't create the problems. Your growth revealed them. There's a difference. And the grief you're feeling, that's real. You're mourning the family you wish you had, the family you deserved, the family that would celebrate your healing instead of punishing you for it. That grief is valid. And you're allowed to feel it while still moving forward. So what do you actually do? How do you navigate growth when your family is actively working against it? Step 1. Stop seeking their approval. This is the hardest step, and the most important. You have to stop waiting for your family to validate your growth. They're not going to wake up one day and say, "You were right. We're proud of you for setting boundaries." They're not going to suddenly understand why you need space. They're not going to applaud your therapy breakthrough. And waiting for that approval will keep you stuck, because you'll keep shrinking yourself, explaining yourself, defending yourself, hoping that if you just say it the right way, they'll finally understand. They understand. They just don't agree. And you can't control that. What you can control, validating yourself, trusting yourself, believing that your growth is good even when they say it's not. This means making decisions based on your well-being, not their comfort. This means setting boundaries even when they call you selfish. This means choosing yourself even when they call it betrayal. Your growth doesn't need their permission. Step 2. Create physical and emotional distance. You cannot heal in the environment that made you sick. You cannot grow in proximity to people who are invested in your stagnation. This doesn't necessarily mean cutting contact. though sometimes it does. It means creating enough space that their dysfunction doesn't derail your progress. Practical distance might look like limiting phone calls to once a week instead of daily, keeping visits short and structured, not sharing details about your therapy or personal growth. Having an exit plan for family gatherings, staying in a hotel instead of their house. Emotional distance might look like not defending your choices, not explaining your boundaries, not engaging with guilt trips, not taking their comments personally, not expecting them to understand. You're not abandoning them. You're protecting your peace long enough to get strong. Step 3. Find your chosen family. You need people who celebrate your growth, who understand your journey, who don't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. This might be friends, a support group, a therapist, an online community, a mentor. Find your people, because here's what nobody tells you. You can't do this alone. You need mirrors, people who reflect back the truth when your family is trying to convince you you're wrong. You need people who say, your boundaries are healthy, your feelings are valid, your family's response is about them, not you. You're doing the right thing. Your chosen family doesn't replace your biological family, but they give you what your biological family can't or won't. Unconditional support for your healing. And over time, these relationships show you what healthy family actually looks like, what love without conditions feels like, what support without strings attached means. Step 4. Grieve the family you deserved. This is painful, but necessary. Grieve the family you wish you had. Grieve the parents who should have celebrated your growth. Grieve the siblings who should have had your back. Grieve the family that should have been your safe place instead of your greatest source of pain. Let yourself feel the loss, the anger, the betrayal, the sadness. All of it is valid. You're not being dramatic. You're mourning something real. The fantasy of unconditional family love that you now realize was never there the way you needed it to be. And here's what's important. Grieving doesn't mean giving up hope. It means accepting reality. It means stopping the exhausting work of trying to force them to be who they're not. Once you grieve who they're not, you can start seeing who they actually are. And you can decide with clear eyes what kind of relationship, if any, you want with the real Tafrem. Step 5. Redefine what family means. Family isn't just blood. Family isn't just obligation. Family is who shows up for you, who supports your growth, who loves you at your best and your worst. You get to redefine family for yourself. You get to include people who earn that title through their actions, not their genetics. You get to exclude people who use the title to justify mistreatment. This doesn't make you a bad person. This makes you someone who values real connection over performative obligation. You're not rejecting family. You're rejecting a toxic definition of family that requires you to sacrifice yourself. And you're creating a new definition, one where family means safety, support, mutual respect, and genuine love. One where people earn access to you through how they treat you, not through biology. Imagine this. A year from now, you're at a family gathering. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment about your new lifestyle or your boundaries, and instead of the familiar shame, the guilt, the urge to defend yourself, you just feel neutral, because you know who you are. You know your growth is valid. You know their discomfort isn't your responsibility. You're no longer seeking their approval because you've given it to yourself. You leave the gathering when you're ready, not when you've fulfilled some unspoken obligation. You don't replay the comments for days, wondering if they're right. You don't lose sleep over their disappointment. You've stopped shrinking to make them comfortable. You've stopped explaining your choices to people who don't want to understand. You've stopped betraying yourself to maintain relationships with people who won't meet you halfway. Your relationships have shifted. Maybe some family members have come around, slowly, reluctantly, but they're trying. Maybe some haven't, and you've accepted that with peace instead of pain. Maybe you've stepped back entirely, and the relief is finally greater than the guilt. You've built a life that doesn't require their permission. You've surrounded yourself with people who celebrate your growth, who understand your journey, who love the real you, not the small version you used to perform. You still have hard days. You still feel the ache of wanting family relationships to be different, but that ache doesn't control you anymore. It doesn't pull you back into dysfunction. It doesn't make you question your worth. You've learned that you can love people from a distance. You can honor your roots without letting them strangle your growth. You can respect where you came from without staying there. And here's what changes everything. You've realized that the family who truly matters, the ones who show up, who support you, who love you well, they're not necessarily the ones you share DNA with. They're the ones you've chosen, and who've chosen you. You look back at who you were before, the people pleaser, the peacekeeper, the one who set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm, and you barely recognize that person. You've become the ancestor your lineage needed, the cycle breaker, the one who said, enough. The one who chose healing over comfort, truth over performance, freedom over approval. And yeah, it cost you. But what you gained, peace, authenticity, self-respect, real connection, is worth infinitely more than what you lost. If you've made it this far, you're not just watching, you're ready to break the cycles that have been breaking you. You've just invested over 10 minutes in understanding one of the hardest truths about family dynamics, and that tells me you're serious about your healing. You're not alone in this. This community is full of cycle breakers, pattern interrupters, and people choosing themselves even when it costs them approval. We're all learning that growth sometimes means disappointing people who are comfortable with our smallness. Subscribe to be part of this ongoing transformation. Every week we're diving deeper into family dynamics, healing, and building lives that honor who we're becoming, not who we're expected to remain. You belong here. Welcome to your chosen family. Here's your challenge for this week. Identify one way you've been shrinking yourself to keep your family comfortable, just one. Maybe it's not sharing good news, because you're afraid of their jealousy. Maybe it's answering every call even when you don't have capacity. Maybe it's explaining your boundaries when they don't deserve an explanation. This week, stop doing that one thing. Not to prove a point, not to start a fight, but to practice choosing yourself. And notice what happens. Notice their reaction. Notice your guilt. Notice what it feels like to take up space without apologizing for it. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who's been made to feel guilty for their growth. Comment and tell me, what's the hardest part about growing when your family wants you to stay small? I read every comment, and your stories help build this community. Subscribe as you commit to your healing, even when it disappoints people who preferred your pain. Share this with someone who needs permission to choose themselves. Your growth isn't betrayal, it's liberation. And you deserve it, even if they never understand why. Now go break that cycle. You've got this.